Welcome, friends, once again. And as I was talking with you in the beginning, that today we are starting a new series of webinar based on this book called Conversation with Yogananda. And as I was reading the preface of this book, as Swami Kriyananda, he said that it took him almost 50 years to write this book. And he said that any person who will read this will somehow question in his mind that why Swami took so many years, so long to write this book. And he said that he's just put it very poetically, that writing this book was like excavating a diamond mine. That is to say that one has to attain maturity as a disciple also to present the profound wisdom of a great master in a way as he intended when he was saying and when he was talking. So which is to say that Swamiji was noting, he came to Yogananda in 1948, and in 1950 Yogananda ji told him that whatever he's talking informally to his visitors and to his disciples, he should note it down in a notebook. And from 1950s he started maintaining his notebook, and Swamiji wrote that it was his most valuable possession. In fact, he used to always keep those books in his safe, and he always used to take care of those notebooks as a parent will take care of his precious child. And so he said that for all these years, he was picking up some of these spiritual nuggets, and he wrote his autobiography when he wrote The New Path. And then he took some of this material in writing the book called The Essence of Self-Realization, which was the book which was chosen earlier for the webinars that we did until now. And many of these, talks and short talks as well as short conversations which he could not compile in that book, he compiled in this book. And so it is very interesting, and it is in fact very blessed that we are having this opportunity to share among ourselves this wisdom of the great master. And today I'm going to read, in fact, the very first 2 to 3 conversations which were happening with Yogananda. And here he writes that a professor from Columbia University once came to lunch at Mount Washington. This professor had a probing mind, and among many questions he asked one question: how do you distinguish between yourself and your followers? This was a very tricky question. And Master replied, all are waves on the same one ocean, composed as ocean water is of the same substance, spirit. Some of the waves are higher than others. Some waves don't even want to distance themselves from the ocean. All waves, no matter how high, are in essence one and the same. The difference between the Guru and the disciples then lies only in their respective closeness to the ocean, in how conscious each one is of his essential reality. The greater the sense of ego, the taller the wave, and the greater in consequence the ignorance. The greater one's awareness of the ocean as one's sole reality, the smaller the wave, and also the less his sense of having a separate individuality. Professor later asked him, is there a difference then of evolution? And Master said, yes, if we understand evolution to mean a progressive refinement of awareness, the tall waves participate more exuberantly in the play of delusion, whereas the little waves which are more enlightened are no longer excited by the play. Enlightened beings enjoy everything not for itself, but as a play of God. And Professor later asked, is there any end to evolution? And Master replied, no end. You go on until you achieve endlessness. And let me read just one more brief conversation, which is a follow-up to this one, and then we'll discuss about it. The same professor, in fact, he asked another question: is man important in the scheme of things? And Master replied, man is important in one sense only. He was made in the image of God. That is his importance. He is not important for his body, ego, or personality. His constant affirmation of ego consciousness is the source of all his problems. Man was given ego consciousness to inspire him to seek God. That is the only reason for his existence. Job, friends, personal interests, these things by themselves mean nothing. Now, that is a very bold statement. At one point, I was thinking that Master was not even mincing his words when he was saying that the only reason why God has created man and he has given him his individuality is so that he can find him. Otherwise, his job, his family, his friends, they do not carry any meaning at all. And now just look at our lives, in a way, how sometimes, we exult in all these outer achievements that we have, so called, if we can even call those achievements, in our prized positions and possessions, our relationships, and we always get cocooned in that smaller reality, and year after year we just becomes the only reality in which we remain limited, and we just are not able to see beyond, and we just feel that this entirely is the only existence that we have. And I think that is precisely the reason why great masters, they always keep coming to remind us, what is the larger purpose, why God has created man. And this evening also, I think we are discussing about this subject because, as we see that, as the Columbia professor is asking, what is, and we have talked about this subject earlier also, that Yogananda himself, has said that this creation, which we always cling to, and we always see that this is the only reality that we have to relate to, is nothing but a God's dream. And more often, Yogananda always used to say that this is nothing but a cosmic movie show. It's a play, it's a leela which is happening. And as I was reading one of the books by another yoga master, Swami Sachidananda, who was a good friend of Swami Kriyananda, he gave a very simple example. He said that, okay, let us say we have a group of 50 people, and out of those 50 people, 22 come forward to play. So that is to say that the rest 28 have already decided to become the audience, which is fine, because if there is a play, there has to be some audience also to appreciate it. And among those 22, then we have two teams of 11 players each. And among that team also, one of the guy has to become, let us say, a wicket keeper. The other is a bowler. And among the bowlers also, we have a spin bowler and a pace bowler. Then we have batsmen. Then we have, people, those who are specializing in different fielding skills. So you see, all these different roles in which the player assign themselves. It is because of the need of the game. And all of these players, when they play their roles well, then only the game happens, and then only the audience are able to enjoy the game, and the players also are able to enjoy their game which they are playing. And at the end of the game, all the 50 people, those who came to play or to watch the show, they go back home. And in a way, with this short reminder and a short, example, he was trying to tell us that this whole creation, as big as it may look to us, with the 100 billion galaxies and their planets and stellar systems, and Earth having about 6 to 7 billion people, is nothing but a cosmic movie show. And all these different roles that we are playing are just the need of the play, and that is why we are playing them. And sometimes, because of these outer definitions and roles, there is a segregation in a society. Sometimes there is a privileged class and there is a underprivileged, or let us say rich and poor, or discrimination between have and have nots. And even among nations, some people think they are the superior class and the other considers themselves inferior, and then the battles and the wars happen. But the final reality, as Master himself is saying, that all of us and every single reality, every single atom is made up of the same substance called spirit. And the only difference between a realized master and an ordinary human being is that a realized master is always aware of that reality, that what is the underlying substance, he has come from where, he's always aware, and the ordinary person is not aware. That's the only difference. And just imagine, in an ocean there are different waves, there are small waves and big waves, but the small wave is always close to the bosom of the ocean, as if it is not playing in the hands of Maya, the storm of Maya. Whereas the tall waves, those who are exulting and those who are playing in the hands of Maya, of the wind which is blowing on the ocean, they sometimes are tall and they seem to be excited about the whole game and the play. And as a result, the higher those waves are, going, there is a chance, and that the higher the wave goes, it has to come down also at the other point, because whatever goes up has to come down. That is the law of the universe. Whereas the smaller wave, always remaining aware of the underlying reality, never falls, because it never exalts itself, beyond that point. And at one point, Swami Kriyananda gave a beautiful example. He said that we are all like small children, young babies, maybe a toddler, not a baby. Those who are very excited, if you want to take them for, let us say, some excursion, or let us say a zoo, and they are so excited, oh yes, we are going and we are going to play and do this and that. And at the morning, they are so exuberant about it, but by the afternoon, their enthusiasm starts coming down. And in the evening, they sometimes get cranky because all that excitement goes down and they just want to go back home. So you see, this whole game, if we understand that why are we here, what is the larger purpose of life, is very important to understand for a devotee and for all of us. In fact, Swami Kriyananda at one point said that the most common disease which is there in these times is the disease of meaninglessness. Everybody thinks that there is no purpose, Many of us feel that there is no purpose behind this whole show. And we sometimes feel that, is really there a common creator? But even a cursory glance, and as I was reading from some of these Einstein quotes, he said that even just a cursory glance at nature, looking at these flowers, looking at the fruits, how these things are coming from the soil, and the clockwork precision, if we see in the galaxies, the stellar systems, how these planets are revolving and how these sun and solar systems, they are existing. Even that cursory, a general look can make us, believe that there has to be some intelligence behind all this. And our only purpose in life is to remain in touch, remain in awareness of that underlying reality. Because if that is the intelligence, definitely we can perform well, and we can perform, very good and to the greatest of our, joy, if we live in cooperation with that reality. So that itself is the only purpose of life. And purpose of life sometimes, can be also seen from this aspect, that there is a universal reality which is common for all of us. That yes, we have to see that there is an underlying ocean of spirit, which is the underlying substance from which we all of us are made up. But at the same time, we have to perform some individual roles. And once we find that peace and joy and bliss is our underlying reality, once we have found that, then in our outer roles, whether we are a doctor or an engineer or a businessman or a homemaker, then that individual purpose is just to express that joy in whatever outer role that the play's demand has put on us. So we just have to share that joy, that underlying bliss in that outer role that we are performing. So then outer role becomes just an expression of that inner joy that we are feeling in ourselves. Now, I can say that in my last few years of my practice of Gurudev's teachings, what I understood was that whenever, if I see that if this is the simple, purpose behind all of our lives, then how is it that if I'm made up of the same spirit, then why is it that I lose that sense of touch? And the answer is that it is our restless mind. It is because there are two forces of nature which are always active, which is, and this is intentional, and we may call it Satan or Maya, which is very conscious force, as Swami said, which whose job is just to make us forget that our underlying reality is this ocean of peace and tranquility. And since it is constantly active, so we also, the other force, which is the divine force, which is under will, and we have to exercise our human will also, so that this divine will can become a part of us, in order to bring our mind to the state of calmness. Because as all the great masters have said, that you don't have to acquire anything from outside. Peace and joy is your true nature. But because the mind becomes restless, we sometimes forget who we are. And here the teachings of yoga, and in the yoga also the teachings of pranayama and meditation, I find are most helpful in bringing our mind to that state of calmness. And if I call pranayama, it is not something very difficult to understand. Just a slow, deep and long breathing, can do that job for you. Many times, even in our daily, life and practice, sometimes if you feel that, okay, there is something which, something from outside which is disturbing your mind, which is disturbing you, let us say, and I have seen this again and again in my life happening, that if I see something, okay, yes, this is not right, or this is disturbing, rather than fighting with that thing or reality, immediately I try to bring my attention to my own mind, that my mind is restless, so let me work on my mind, let me practice this deep breathing, and then see and visualize that outer reality which is happening. And again I have found that the moment my mind becomes calm, by just practicing a few rounds of deep breathing and focusing my mind one pointedly at this point, my whole perspective changes. Just a moment back, outer incident or an event which was disturbing me suddenly becomes neutral, and I start viewing that thing, from a different set of eyes. And friends, you will be surprised that this has happened to me, many times. I have seen, I have in moments when I was having a difficult relationship with my loved ones, or it was a financial difficulty, or let us say losing my job. And each time, I made it a practice that yes, my only job is to keep my mind calm. And since the greater ocean of peace and joy is the underlying reality, the wisdom will come, and the next step which I have to take will definitely come. And each time it has come, which has given me this guidance. And the only prayer in my life is, which as Swami Yogananda used to say, that this is how I begin my day, that thy will must be done, not my will. And yes, some people may think that, oh, this way, they will become passive. But believe me, you won't become passive. You won't become passive by losing all your desires or by giving all your motivation to him. But rather what happens is that our lives become much more simpler. Because, and I in fact wrote to Swami Yogananda ji, when he was alive in his physical body, in a mail, that what do you think is my tapasya? What do you think is the will of God in my life? And he said that whatever happens in your life, just see that event coming from God. And to this date, I have always seen that whatever happens, I just say, okay, God, if this is your will, let it be. But please guide me. If you want to change my action, that is not to say that we have to become passive. But I always tell him that, okay, yes, if you want to change my thought process, if you want to change me, if you want to change the way I have to act, please guide me. Please change my reasoning. Please change my way of, thinking. And that is how, we can attune ourselves to the masters and to the divine reality at a moment's notice, so that we can always exercise that, yes, at each part of our life, divine will is happening. And believe me, and friends, this is something, which I feel that divine is always waiting, in fact, to use us as instruments. And that is the way, that is why, as Master is saying, he has created man only for this purpose, so that he can find God. But the only thing which God wants is waiting for us, is our approval. Because he has given us freedom to exercise our will, and he cannot use us without our approval. The moment we say, God, I am willing to do your will, then he can use us as his instruments. And you will be amazed to see that our lives become much more meaningful, much more simpler, and much more joyful. So with that, I'll take your leave, and we will meet, again, some of my friends, with some new wisdom, with some new talk of Yogananda that we'll love to share with you. Joy to you, and have a beautiful weekend.